Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds, and today I'm hanging out with a special guest, Derek Schomer from, I believe it's Everyday Cocktails or Common Man Cocktails.
Common Man Cocktails or Everyday Drinkers is the URL.
Yeah. I started like smashing them together, but we were just talking a little bit beforehand, and I was saying this is not exactly the crossover I was expecting to do when I started doing these live chats, but it came about kind of in a weird way where you had tweeted at us because apparently you had asked a question or brought up something on one of your shows, and one of the fans in the comments mentioned Nerdarchy.
Right.
And so I responded to that question, and then I was like, you know what, it'd probably be pretty cool to have you come on and for us to talk about like specialty drinks for like a themed party like fantasy or science fiction or your Lord of the Rings party, or now we got plenty of Marvel movies to dig into.
Yeah. Originally, it was more of a Patreon question. I didn't know if I was going to get an answer because you could send a lot of stuff on Twitter, and some people they don't really check it very often. So I was surprised to get the answer. Then when you're like, "Hey, what do come on!" I checked out your content. I'm like, "Wow, this is kind of what you're doing." Is kind of what was in the back of my head. It's something that I thought would be like years ago, 2008. I was like, what would be really neat is to just sit down at a table with like a bunch of people and like play Dungeons and Dragons. I couldn't figure out. First off, most of the problem I'd have is my friends are all at the age where they're having kids, and getting everybody together is like pulling teeth. And I was like, yeah, that's probably not gonna. I'll stress out way too much trying to organize that. Then I get into the drinking thing instead.
You're to then need the drinks after trying to organize it can be brutal, and we've been gaming for a long time, and the gaming table has gone up and it has gone down. But I'll tell you one thing. Apparently, if you start a mildly successful YouTube channel, your table really never suffers for people.
This is true. Yeah, I mean, if people want to be seen, people like to have their chance in their glory. And the thing is, there's so many cool cast of characters that everybody knows that they kind of have a good time. Especially role playing and stuff like that. You have those people that are typically pretty reserved, but when you're hanging around with your buddies and stuff like that, camera or no camera, people get into it. And I know I have friends that if I could highlight, I'd like to have like face cams on all of them so that you can kind of see the reaction because they're just characters. They're funny to watch. And I think it would make for a good show.
That's
I don't know.
that's kind of what we should do, and we'll probably move to eventually. Right now, we just have like the wide shot of the table and us all playing, other than the games that we actually do online. But like now, it's actually a thing. You have celebrity DMs Matt Mercer out there, and also Chris Perkins is out there. You have with Acquisition Inc. The packs. All this stuff is like sprung up over the last like 5-10 years. It's a thing now for sure.
Yeah, and the minute you do what I suggested, your edit time goes through the roof. That's the biggest issue. Is like, well, now I've got all these face cams. I got to pull them in at the right time. It's like if you watch Deadliest Catch, right? I know I love Deadliest Catch, the show. Like it's fun to watch because it's just the characters, and I can only imagine pouring through millions of hours of video to build the ultimate, season. It would just be a nightmare, but it'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, that's why they pay guys to do that.
Yeah.
It's not a YouTuber sitting there at his
Yeah.
computer plugging away.
Turns
That
out we don't all have a huge crew to work from.
yes,
Yeah.
I've talked to guys that work for TV stations about things, and I'm like, yeah, this is way out of my budget.
Yeah. I mean, sure, if you have $1 million for a set, you're good.
You're absolutely good.
Yeah. That's kind of funny.
So every once in a while, I get lost in the chat. So if I kind of like wander off, don't mind me. I'm paying attention to you and them. They're out there.
Yeah, I forgot to totally open up the chat.
So every once in a while, I get lost in the chat. So oh, like found it.
All right.
Yeah, I just usually pop it up and keep it in here with us.
Cool. I'll do that. There we go. Pretty cool.
Well, yeah, he is the cocktail guy. I would imagine he would have a full bar in the background.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. That's actually the whole set. Like everybody's like, "Oh, you run a bar?" I'm like, "No, I've never bartended in my life. I only bartend on TV." And the my father actually built the bar. He spent most of his life as an 18th century woodworker, kind of building hand built furniture. And this was the culmination after he was he retired and everything, and did the whole oops, I cut off all my fingers on a table saw, but put you into retirement, and they sewed him back on and he built that. So, we've been using that since November. It's a full bar, but I don't, if anybody out there's like, I want to be like you, I don't suggest a full bar, or you don't have to build and buy every cocktail ingredient in the world. You could really work with like 5, maybe 10 things and be able to create some really awesome stuff.
So one of the cool things that kind of came up when we've been kind of chatting back and forth on Twitter was the fact that you're actually a huge nerd.
Yeah, yeah, that happens. It comes out every now and then. Like when I originally started, I did a lot of Hawaiian shirts, and then I kind of moved into kind of nerdy shirts, and uh, you know, it creates such a reaction. You start to pull out certain people within your fan base that are nerds by just wearing a D&D shirt, and people are like, dude, I love that shirt. Where'd you get it? I'm like, think Geek. Like there's like a handful of stores you could get this stuff on, and I try and collect all these random shirts just because it's fun. And I was a programmer for 15 years, so I used to wear them to work when available, and that was always a good time.
Oh, nice. You need that Think Geek, the Think Geek affiliate
Yeah,
program.
that's a pretty good idea. I should have probably done that. And then at that same time, I've kind of tried to bring a little bit that into the show. Like you're going to get bartenders when you're running a show about cocktails, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that are aligned with nerdy stuff, because I think it has to do with the medium, right? It's not television where everybody sits down. You're talking YouTube, and back in 2008 and beyond, you have more kind of nerds and geeks on the computer using video and consuming video. So naturally, you kind of get that audience.
So, for any of your shows, have you done a Screaming Viking yet?
No, I've not done a screaming Viking. I mean, is this a drink that's currently invented, or should I be inventing one?
Well, all right. So, how old are you? First of all, let's start there.
I am 41 as of
Okay,
last month.
you're actually the same age as me. So, Cheers, they replaced. I remember if they replaced Sam or Woody with another bartender. So, so they had a competition to against the new bartender and the old one, and everyone kept coming in asking for a Screaming Viking, which was something that they made up.
Really, I don't remember that, and I've watched a lot of Cheers. Of course, 20 years have gone by, so
Yes.
what now I have a co-host, Ian, and he's that guy that remembers movie quotes and random tidbits of information which he calls completely useless, but he remembers it, right? I remember a completely different stuff. He remembers like and he always drops these quotes, and I'm like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, it's from such and such a movie. I'm like, I might have seen it.
Honestly, I generally don't remember anything, but every once in a while, like something that'll find its way through.
So the funny thing is, and I wanted to make sure to mention this, is there's a lot of themed cocktails that exist right now. Like, because I look for ideas, right? As a YouTube creator, one of the things we have to do is figure out how to draw in an audience and how to get people searching organically to find you. So pop culture cocktails, if you create a cocktail about The Walking Dead before the season premiere, you're going to get more views. If you create a Game of Thrones cocktail before the next season, you're going to get the views, right? So I'm always hunting for what's already there, because that saves me so much time. The problem is, and I went through Cork's Bar and went through like all the Star Trek cocktails I could find, and I'm looking at them all, and they're all crap. Like there's just the problem is nerds don't always create the best cocktails, and they're usually sweet and they're usually very thematic, but it's easy to come up with something that sounds good in theme. It's very hard to come up with something that sounds good in theme and tastes good. That's the challenge.
So what would be a good example of that? What drink have you had to fix?
I've fixed Klingon blood wine, like anything where people are like, it's Klingon, so it needs to have 151. Well, okay, maybe it does. Maybe it needs to be potent, but it should be a good potent, right? It doesn't need to be just pure alcohol so that you grow hair on your chest. I think it should be something that's appreciated for what it is, but also fits a theme. That might be red or blue or whatever. So what I did is I pulled a couple that I thought might make some level of sense. Okay, here's a good one for things that you don't want to do but sound good in theory. Anybody who creates the Pangalactic Gargle Blaster, it's always a bad drink because I think it's intended to be that way. Like, there's first off, there's no ingredients. They just give you a bunch of random things that's supposed to be mythological spirits. So people have to equate what does that mean with an actual thing. So, for us, every time we create a Pangalactic Gargle Blaster, you're basically drinking Listerine. Like it's mint, gin, some bitters, more mint, maybe some lemon and some moonshine. Right? So you're in an olive because you just have to have an olive. It makes no sense.
So just because we're on this topic, I have to go here real quick. Generally, I take questions from our patrons first. And, Scott Mohan, what would you consider to be your version of the Pangalactic Gargle Blaster? And then he goes to describe, where it's from, what it is. It is considered by the guide to the. I'm getting lost here. The best drink in existence. Its effects are similar to having your brain smashed by a slice of lemon wrapped in a wrapped around a large gold brick. So basically, what you just said, and that's funny that question came in last night.
Oh, really? That's. I mean, okay. Well, then let's answer that in specific detail. So one of the things is the gold. You got to come up with all these things that match. So some people have used like a Goldschlager because it has gold pieces in it, right? So you think gold. Well, Goldschlager's got peppermint. So you're still on the mint. Gin is the only thing that kind of plays into the role of that quote that you can fit. There's blue curacao for the ocean or sea. Bitters because I think it says it had to be bitter. Club soda was used for the bubbles. Like you have to basically take the quote and map it to something. Moonshine made the most sense because it has to hit you like a brick, right? But it always comes out tasting like Listerine. It just, and I've done it twice. We've recreated it a couple times because it's funny. And I am by far, and if you've ever decide, oh, you should go watch this guy's show, and you find whenever we talk about Douglas Adams, I usually crap on it because I can't stand that book. Like it's just, I don't like the British comedy dry, whatever it is. I just can't do it. I'd rather read The Lord of the Rings than The Hitchhiker's Guide. It's just bad.
So do you ever take the drinks and go, well, you know what? If I do it the way you would expect, that's going to be junk. So how do I do this and just make it a good drink and and still preserve the theme?
The way, I mean, the way you can apply bartending science to pretty much anything and kind of get away with something that's pretty good. You just have to bridge the gap, and one of those is you have to have, it's usually like a 2-on-1 ratio or something, like spirit to sour to sweet. The problem is people forget the sour part, right? And they go for spirit and then oftentimes a liqueur because it either makes the color right or the taste based on the theme. And liqueurs are typically sweet. So you just keep bringing more sweet into it and no sour. So if you balance it like a margarita, right, you're going to have a lot of tequila, maybe 2 ounces of tequila, usually an ounce of sweet and an ounce of sour, and maybe some orange liqueur, right? So you get an appreciation for the flavor. With the sonic screwdriver, for instance, I redesigned a sonic screwdriver because I was just finishing the latest seasons of Doctor Who, and I had this epiphany. I needed to create a new sonic screwdriver. So I made it a gin-based drink. The theme being Doctor Who takes place in the UK, so it should be a UK spirit. So gin made sense. It might be Cardiff or whatever outside of London, but whatever. Gin's working. I used thyme, simple syrup, because Time Lord, it made sense. grapefruit juice and orange juice. So I had a little bit of bite and a little bit of kind of a sweetness. Blue curacao because I needed to be blue because it's the sonic screwdriver and it's either blue or green. And then I used some like maraschino liqueur, which is a little bit more, it's a pre-prohibition style liqueur that people would use to add a nuanced flavor. It doesn't really taste like cherries. And then a little bit of cherry bitter and an orange peel, right? So I had some of the sour. I had the grapefruit sour, but I also balanced that against a little bit of orange juice with the thyme simple syrup. It gave it a drink that's very similar to what you'd get in the 40s or the 30s, but it was a sonic screwdriver. It was that easy. So it could be done. It's just not a lot of people put a lot of thought into it.
I'm thinking we have to do a Nerdarchy event and have you come bartend for us.
It is. I mean, the other issue with themed drinks is they tend to be complicated. So some of these are just batched. So for an event like that, you'd want like at least have a lot of some of those ingredients ready to go, because and the other key here for this specific drink is it shouldn't knock you on your face too quickly, right? That's something that you see a lot of. Everything's going to be potent. If you're having a nerd event, if you're going to sit down and play like 6 hours of Dungeons and Dragons, if the DM has to deal with drunk people by the 30th minute, right? It gets funny and then it gets not so funny. So you got to balance it out.
That is absolutely true. We had done a comic book cruise back in January, and they had themed drinks, but their themed drinks weren't really themed. They literally just, I think they just took regular drinks and slapped a theme name on them. I was a little disappointed.
I will admit I have done that sort of. I've tweaked things. I don't just take a drink that already exists, because as somebody with a bunch of viewers that watch the show, at least one person's going to catch on to that ruse. Like, you can't BS your audience. Like, that's just, it's never going to work. The human BS meter is huge. Like, people catch on real quick. And the minute one person does, everybody finds out. So like, I did an old fashioned, but rather than just doing an old fashioned, I wanted to figure out what would Negan from The Walking Dead drink. I know he would probably be drinking whiskey, and it would be some sort of old fashioned. So I just kind of twisted it up a little bit, and I used whiskey barrel aged aromatic bitters. I used some really some Demerara sugar instead of regular sugars, club soda, and orange wheel. And I changed a couple of the key ingredients just to give it a little bit of a different taste. So it was a different drink. But you can't really do too much with an old fashioned because it's so simple. I just wanted it to kind of have like a little twist to it so that I can name it myself and it could get some views.
Nice. So you said you were a programmer before going into YouTube. So how did you make that transition? Like, and you said you were never a bartender or anything like that. So how did it come about? Why drinks?
Well, when it was probably around 2005-ish, I always had, pretty much from college, me and my buddy were writing code. We started working on like MMO games in around 98 and just trying to do some sort of like online gaming back when programming with networking was nearly not documented. And once we graduated, I went to a startup company, worked many hours, but I still always had that side gig. In this case, it was usually some sort of game or whatever. And the problem is when you're doing something like that, as the gaming industry grew, it became very hard to compete against that. Nowadays with mobile, it would be awesome. But you could never really, you always looked indie, and it never got finished. So I needed something else. And I started saying, oh, well, what do I don't sell video games? That would be cool. So I started a little online video game store. That wasn't working because GameStop was just killing me. And so I said, well, what else can we do? What if we market it with a podcast? So I started a podcast in 2007 called Gaming Podcast. And we had a whole bunch of people on, and it was a good time. The podcast actually outlived the store. And then I went to do marketing and research, and there was nobody wanted to sell me ads. So I said, how do I get ads? I found another market. I'm like, well, alcohol. I mean, I was looking for money, right? I'm like, if I do that, there's less people in it, it'll be better. So I wrote code in the day, and then I did an audio show about alcohol at night. Then I moved into video. And once I started doing the YouTube thing, the presentations at work started getting a lot more fun and easy. So if I had to present in front of the engineering team, whatever I was working on, people were blown away. They're like, "You're a really good speaker." Like, a lot of people are very reserved. There's a lot of ums and ahs and whatever. So I kind of brought the two worlds together and somehow ended up in sales instead of programming. And they moved me into sales, which, by the way, I don't recommend you do. Pays really well, but it's really not that much fun. And it kind of killed the career for me because, like, now I can't get back into programming very easy because I've been doing this and I don't like this. So I just said, screw it. I'm just going to become a YouTuber. And, I still, I have an online store where I sell cocktail gear and stuff like that. And I use my programming knowledge to kind of advance the website a little bit more and build more features into it and functionality that wasn't there before. But I don't actively program right now. That could change, but
I'm really good at breaking our website. So,
Yeah. Well, the biggest issue I had was with everydaydrinkers.com, where I post the videos, was I used to use like Blip TV and a couple other places to embed videos. Well, that died. And then YouTube was my primary way, but half the database was embedded with these Blip videos and the other half was YouTube. And I had to build like this database migration to kind of like bring it all into the YouTube world. And that broke a lot of things. But when it was done, it was awesome.
I've spent so many hours on the phone with GoDaddy. It's not even funny. You guys out there, you don't even know. Whenever the website is down, a lot of people bash them and diss them, but I like them because I can call them up pretty much at any time, and someone will sit on the phone with me and usually fix my problem.
Yeah. See, I did GoDaddy I did that originally. Then they made me angry because they kept making me buy more stuff. So I moved to Linode and I run the whole Linux server myself I built the entire server so that I run it. So when it breaks, it's really me.
It's all you. Yeah, see, if I tried something like that, I would probably just burn down my house. It would be kind of ugly.
Yeah.
But at least with WordPress, it's kind of easy. Usually, it's like, oh, something updated. What's not playing nice now, and then you
Right.
kind of turn things off, turn things on, eventually figure it out.
Yeah.
But probably putting the audience to sleep with the tech talk. My neighbor, I've had things on there that I've luckily, like, a lot of the fans are very helpful with different things, and someone had reached out to us and I was like, hey, could you take a look at this thing? And they're like, I don't have time. Well, I went back and fixed something else, and it was my sidebar. It just vanished. It happens sometimes, and eventually I could do stuff and it'll come back. Well, this time I couldn't get it back, and like months later the comments weren't working, so I went in there and messed around until I could fix them, and the sidebar came back. I'm like, well, that was good. And that guy, he ended up messaging me later. He's like, hey, I saw your sidebars back. How did you fix that in case I need to figure something out in the future? I'm like, I broke something else and fixed that, and then it got fixed. I have no idea. I just push buttons, dude.
Oh, dude, you should have totally been like, yeah, I just saw the bug and I just tweaked it a little bit, fixed the style sheets, got the CSS working, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, my tech talk is more like, it was the flux capacitor. I replaced that, we were golden. 88 miles an hour, bam.
Well, and I saw in chat somebody had asked why so many developers are into Dungeons and Dragons. Like, I think it's probably going to change, I think, in the future. But when we were kids, like, that was our outlet, was D&D. And my first program I ever wrote, which actually got me into development, was I was running my own campaign, and it was just me and my buddy Don, and we didn't really have anybody else that played D&D or anything like that. My cousin, but he had moved away, and he would only come every now and then. So I built in DOS Basic, I built an NPC generator that I learned a lot of things that not to do, but I took the original Dungeon Master's Guide. You get to the back, I think 198 or whatever. It was just all charts.
Right? The dungeon generator.
Yeah, just the charts for everything. Any dungeon generator, anything that was in there, like treasure generation, all that stuff, I coded it. Like, wrote it all into code, and I could just generate a character, and he would roll on all those charts to figure out what he should have for equipment for his level and everything like that. And I ended up breaking DOS because I used too much memory when I started. I didn't know you could put things in files. So I just wrote it all into memory. So when the program loaded, it took every chart from the back of the Dungeons Master's Guide and loaded it into memory, which you had what, 512K or something. And it would just, it eventually crashed, but it used to print to my image writer. And I could generate characters. I could push a button and say generate, and it would print out a character and I could use it in my game. It was pretty cool. And I just kept going from there.
Yeah, plus you got to figure, right? All the kids that were nerds when we were growing up probably went into the tech industry, and it's good, and that's why there's so many people in there. I would imagine as well, because
Yeah.
nerds are going to rule the world eventually. It's just a matter of time.
Well, I mean, you that was your outlet. Like that was the direction you go. That was your path. Like I don't know. Maybe this happens. Maybe you could become a doctor, but they're so aligned together. You start getting into nerdy things like playing D&D, on the computer, playing D&D or role playing games on the Nintendo, and then you're like, how does that work? And you start getting into it, and and then your brain starts logically taking it apart and going, I think this was kind of cool. I wonder how you do this, and then all of a sudden you're writing code or something like it.
So intern Kyle, who I don't know if he's old enough to drink, has a question for you. Favorite drink using whiskey?
The whiskey, whiskeys can be tough. My favorite drink using whiskey wouldn't have anything to do specifically thematic, but I always go with the whiskey sour because it's a sour with whiskey and a little bit of sugar, usually balanced against the sour. It's simple to make, and I don't have to think about it. And they always come out really well unless you go to a bar. Then bars could be okay depending on where you're located. New Jersey, New York, LA, you're probably going to be good. If you're where I live in New Hampshire, it's going to be scary. At a wedding, it's going to be terrible. Like they're going to get this big plastic jug that says sour mix. They're going to do this. They're going to take some Jack Daniels and you're done. I want like a homemade, I want a balance of like lemons and simple syrup with a little Buffalo Trace bourbon or something and make it that way. Maybe a couple little bitters, chocolate bitters or something. Not exactly what I'm going to get at a wedding. But when you're at a wedding, the first thing you should do is just be happy that it's an open bar, if it is. And then never complain about a free drink is first rule.
That sounds like solid advice to me.
Never complain about a free drink.
So that being said, are you ever at a place where they're making drinks and you're just like, oh, you just want to push them out from behind the bar and take over?
Yes. And but you got to also have a little humility and go, well, they also have to deal with customers. And okay, that's not true. I get some really horrible YouTube comments. I'm sure you've got the same issue. Like there are people who have no regard for humanity and will say anything that's on their mind. But you could delete them. You could just block them and they go away. If they're at your bar, they're there. And I have been at a bar for company events with some of my partially drunk comrades, and they were the worst I couldn't imagine. Like they made YouTube look bad. And this was in real life. Like this is weird. So I don't, I got to give them that. But anytime I go to a sports bar, it's never a good thing. I don't want to see what's going on. Same thing with resorts in Mexico. Like I sit at the bar and I stare at them and watch them make the drinks because it's usually all inclusive and free. But it's pretty terrible. Like it's not good to watch.
So we had kind of touched on it before, but I want to go back. So themed drinks, like say you were having a Lord of the Rings party, what would you stock for that?
For Lord of the Rings, first you kind of have to know your audience a little bit. So if you were having a party and you knew most people there drink beer, I would probably do some sort of, I probably stay away. I probably do more vodka style drinks, and maybe a little bit of a gin. I probably wouldn't do too much bourbons or scotches or anything, although they thematically might fit better. Like I can envision a bourbon cocktail as something that would be kind of the medieval style of drink. Vodka, obviously, or moonshine. But you can come up with a little bit more of a creative. It'd probably be a little sweeter because they probably aren't used to that. If they come with Budweiser, I would make a sweeter drink. If they came with like a not a home brew, but like a micro brew or something like that, that maybe an IPA, I'd be a little bit more open to getting a little bit more crazy on the cocktail because IPAs have more bitterness to them. And if you can palate the bitterness, you're probably going to have a better chance of palating a more potent cocktail, I think, in theory. Uh, the one that I haven't done, that's one area I don't think I've done too many Lord of the Rings drinks. I did a Winter is Coming shooter for which would kind of, you could probably slide right in there and rename it to be like I don't know, Balrog's ball, I don't know, something, which was like Jagermeister Spice, Kahlua, Velvet Sin, which is like a horchata cream thing with a little bit of grenadine as a
We
shooter.
we can switch our party to Game of Thrones.
They're interchangeable, right?
Yeah.
You've got swords, you've got death. The only thing you're missing in the Lord of the Rings is excessive sex scenes. Otherwise, it's the same thing. I mean, and you probably no. I think in both cases, you would have a hard time memorizing everybody's name. Like that's the one thing. Like I had to read Game of Thrones, like at least the first book, because I couldn't understand what was going on in the show. I don't know how you do it. Like there's just too many names. So I read the books. It was pretty good.
He tried reading the books and he hated all the characters, like not the individual characters, that there were so many of them.
Yeah, there's way too many. But at least when you're reading, the names pop up so often that it just kind of gets ingrained in your head. By the time you get to like the fifth or sixth book, you could just stop reading. But I read through it. I powered through to finish it so I could say I did it.
I greatly enjoyed them. Like now I don't know that you could pay me to go back and read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Like that writing style and the way the story pacing and
Really?
all of that just would not interest me at this point.
The last time I read The Lord of the Rings was probably 4 years ago. I read The Hobbit 3 years ago. Because I don't know why. I like to go back and reread them every now and then. And it's still good. Like I was so happy. I had this guy, one of my roommates in college. I was like, he hadn't read The Lord of the Rings. He was big. We always played D&D. He was a huge D&D guy. I'm like, you are not right in the head. Like you can't play D&D and not have read Lord of the Rings. That's like the basis of everything. So he read like The Fellowship. He got maybe 30% through and he's like, this is the worst book. It's way too slow. I'm bored. I want nothing to do with it. I was sad.
And that honestly, that is like I can respect it and appreciate it for the literature that it is, but because I just enjoy more of a modern storytelling, I feel the same way when it comes to pacing and the amount of action. And it's like if they literally did the movies the way they did the books, it'd be like, oh, they're running away again. Oh, what are they? A fight? Oh no, they're running away. Because they ran from everything because no one wants to die in real life, and that's kind of how it's written.
Right. Peter Jackson was a genius.
He did a good job of remixing that.
Yeah. It's pretty funny.
So Poison wants to know, did you ever get pleasantly surprised by a cocktail request that you previously didn't do?
A lot, actually. What we get most of the content we do is fan submitted recipes. We've got like 900 of them now, and I haven't done. And there are some that I look at and like, no, I'll pass. And then, or I don't have the ingredient for it. And then when we do make it, I'm like, wow, that works. Like there are things that just work. You can't control it. A great example is a pina colada. Scientifically, cocktail science wise, the pina colada should be the worst cocktail ever. It's got nothing going for it that's favorable. It's blended. It's got no sour balance. But it works. Like certain things work. So we tend to make everything and then just see what happens. And sometimes you're surprised. And I got to put it in my playlist of like some of my favorites so that I remember it, because otherwise it would never remember.
How many videos are you up to? I know you're pretty prolific and you've been at this for a while.
I think now we're probably at, let's see, I know it's at least 2,700. We've got total 2,722. Probably not 100% of them are public anymore, because sometimes lawyers come after us or whatever. So we have to, like, people have a hard time with alcohol in their brand. So like when I got an email from Energizer's lawyers saying you can't make an Energizer bunny cocktail, like that's not cool. Like, oh, okay, well, I could take that. Like, people get so afraid, like they're gonna have, their channel shut down for specific things. But most big companies are reasonable, right? They just come over like, can you not do that? I'm like, sure, I'm sorry, and then I just remove it, and life goes on. Not a big deal.
We got a cease and desist from Fox.
That'll do it.
We had put out a Sons of Nerdarchy shirt, and
Yeah.
it was done in a similar style to the Sons of Anarchy. I mean, I think it was completely legit, but it's Fox. What are you gonna do?
That's the exact issue. Is sometimes it's best not to fight things because there's no real gain, and it doesn't really make sense. And I typically fold like immediately. There have been some brands where I'll do some reviews and stuff like that. And early on, we used to do more free reviews. So I had a lime squeeze that somebody had sent me. So I did this cool review. I'm like, this thing's pretty awesome, blah, blah, blah. And it was like a Swiss Army knife and a lime squeeze. And the guy was upset because we didn't use a lime that was ripe enough or something. And it didn't showcase how much juice or how the zest should come off. And I was like, are you serious? He's like, so if you could just redo that and then take that one down. I'm like, no, I could take it down, but I'm not redoing it because I don't see the value. Like, you're telling me the thing I did, which promoted your product and had thousands of views, isn't good enough for you. So why should I give you more coverage? So I just closed that one off.
People are ridiculous.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know what? I wanted to say, when you had said about sales, you don't recommend it. I actually sold building and maintenance supplies over the phone.
Oh, really?
And that was brutal. Let me tell you. Well, I was talking to a different guest, and before the show, we're like, we could spend an hour talking about all the crappy jobs we had before this.
Yeah. There's been some winners. I worked on a plastic mold injection.
So
bad.
Without a doubt, there always is. But that's the origins. It's all part of the origin story.
Right.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm this awesome is because I spent 6 months working in a plastic mold injection facility. I came in the second week, and all the people there were staring at me like I was walking in naked. And they're like, you're coming back? Apparently that doesn't normally happen. Like, people go in and they're like, this sucks. And they leave and they never come back. Like, they don't even call. They just never show up again. And I was apparently a warrior for coming back for week 2. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the best when you work at a place and something gets named after someone because they do something like that. Where they're the one that, like, they leave for lunch and they don't come back.
Yeah.
So we are about that time where we should probably do a roll call before we get out of here. We still got a little time left, but I just like to see where everyone's chiming in from around the world. So, guys, sound off. We got New Hampshire in the house with Derek, and I'm in New Jersey, as you guys all know.
Is there an old Jersey?
I don't think so. It all feels pretty old now. So you guys are putting out 3 videos a week now?
Yeah, and more. So I have a second channel now called The Craft Cocktail. So I do one on Thursdays there, which is very hyper focused on specific types of cocktails, like more of an educational series where one builds on the other. So I kind of took one of our shows and I have a Ring doorbell, by the way. I took one of the shows and moved it over or one of my time slots and moved it over to Thursday so that I'd have time to be able to work on that channel as well. So it's really 4 videos.
That was actually the second doorbell we got this week.
Really? Nobody normally rings my doorbell. I don't know who could possibly be here, but they can leave it, whatever it is.
And it's actually been the first time it ever happened. It was this week too. So we got intern Kyle. He's in Jersey as well. We have Poison from Kuwait, Rob's in Seattle, Comrades in Salem. We got Patrick in Sweden. Hey, I missed you the other day, buddy. We got Mr. Rob's cleaning service in Oregon. We got Fort Lauderdale with Andrew. Flower of Life in Los Angeles. We got Regilio, Utah. We got Epically Noob, Las Vegas. We got Scott in South Carolina. We got Lord Crunk in Plymouth. We got John in Jacksonville. We got Andrew in Corpus Christi. We've got Anthony in Sanford, North Carolina. Andrew. Oh, that's not a place. Andrew Drinkologist, huh? So guys are all over the place, all over the world, chiming in, which is always really cool about this whole internet thing. We get to hang out with people from all over. Does that ever surprise you, like when someone chimes in from someplace really weird? For us, I want to say the weirdest one is like Bulgaria.
Well, we do live streams every once a month now. We used to do it every week. Once a month on a Friday night where we film the entire month's worth of shows. So while I'm filming the shows, I'm filming the live stream of the shows. And so we'll get people from, they're in time zones where it's like 3 a.m. Like, oh, I just watch it from, wherever in Germany or Russia. It's like 3 a.m. here. Some in Australia. They're like, oh, it's like noon here. Like there's all weird time zones. But what it's done for us is it's kind of changed the perspective of how we go about not just presenting, but even speaking. Like you can't just talk about, prices in New Hampshire or for specific spirits or access to them. Like not everybody, believe it or not, has access to every good type of tequila that exists. If you're in Norway, a bottle of vodka could cost you $80, right? For me, I can get it on sale for $14.99. So, you got to keep all these weird things in perspective, including times and languages and barriers around it. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I find that a lot of people are just kind of boned when it comes to RPGs in other parts of the world with shipping and getting it in their language and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it's a small niche, so
That's true. And the languages could be an issue, especially if you're going to pull from an English one, but your grasp on English is kind of RPGs are not the thing that, I mean, it's hard enough for us to understand and it's in our language. Trying to do it in another language, that would be tough.
Anthony, absolutely. Night shift people need entertainment too.
This is true.
Well, before I went full time with this, I was actually doing heavy construction, which a lot of that was, working overnights. And my job in particular was a lot of hurry up and wait. So, when you're getting held up in traffic and you see those guys standing around doing nothing, and you start bitching about it, like, yeah, that either I was that guy or I was waiting for that guy to be able to do their job so I could do my job.
Dude, when I have to drive out of Boston at midnight and like the 93 is closed down and you're like, why is it one lane? Like, I don't want driving out of Boston at anywhere from 2 to 7 is a nightmare, right? So if you're leaving the airport at midnight, the one thing I expect, the one saving grace is I can just get home quickly. And then it's a one lane and it's backed up like it's rush hour. It drives me crazy because like, oh, we're going to rebuild this entire highway right now. Like, right now? You do that tomorrow?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it drives me crazy.
Oh man, yeah, people get angry. People drive by, honk, swear all the time, throw things.
Yeah, I don't get it.
But unfortunately, unless we can come up with a way to like shift it into another time zone, an alternate reality, we're out of phase with this reality, it would be the only way to do the repairs. The other options are during the day when there's even more traffic.
Yeah, but that's fine because I'm not there during the day.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
Well, that is why if we could just figure out how to invent teleporters, everybody's life would be easier. I'd be able to go to VidCon, no problem. Like it was just like I just go wherever I want to go.
Yeah, I think what was it for? I don't know if it was for Boy Scouts or for something for school, but it was coming up with a solution to potholes, and my son's solution was hover cars.
No, that's an easy one. Why not? I mean, if we just make them all hover, then we don't have to worry about the holes.
Right?
You have to plow. You wouldn't even need the streets. Sure.
Yeah. We just need the Jetsons.
Yeah. It doesn't turn out to work as easy as that, but that's the beauty of being a child. Like everything's easy.
Yeah, you just think it, say it, and why isn't it like that?
That's why when my son sees 11 now and he'll like put a video on YouTube, he's like, I don't understand why it's not getting any views. Like, because nobody cares. Like, they don't know who you are. They don't know you put out a video. He just, because he watches like YouTubers doing video games all the time and they have millions of subscribers. And he's like, I don't understand. Why don't I have subscribers? When am I going to get my million? I'm like, work on 2. Get to 3. You'll get there.
So your son is starting to put stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, actually, that he did, and then my wife ran a casual gaming website years ago, and we ended up finding we had a YouTube channel that I didn't know I had apparently, and it has like some of the videos have like 30 or 40,000 views, and we saw it a couple weeks ago, and I can't even log into it, and it kind of got her thinking maybe we should do that again and kind of start it up. So we started up Zero XP Gaming, which is like his little, she's just reviewing mobile games and stuff. So my son's been doing that with her. My daughter every now and then, like we've been playing some Mario Kart 8 and stuff like that. So she's got like 107 subscribers in the last couple months, and he's like, well, how come you guys can get so many subscribers so quickly? I'm like, because I have a channel with 83,000 subscribers. So I just say like, hey, my wife and I are doing this gaming thing, and you get a few, right? You don't get a lot, but you get something. So I kind of kickstarted that by using my own subscriber base to get you there.
We cheat. That's how we do it.
I didn't get to be on TV as a kid, so I don't have like a massive audience to draw from. I had to do all the hard work to get there. Now it pays off. Sometimes
You're 80,000 overnight either, so
now you can, and because I'm one of the YouTube top contributors, so I'm on the creator forums helping out people daily, and sometimes YouTube will fly me out to go through seminars and stuff like that, so I can kind of bring it back, and so these people are like, I don't understand I've been working on this for like 3 months and I have 50 subscribers. I'm like, dude, I worked on it for a year and I had 100 subscribers. So give it some time. 9 years to get where I am, and half of those subscribers don't watch, so it doesn't help me anyway.
I tell people you can expect the first 6 months of crickets.
Yeah.
Easily.
You're going to create a lot of content and nobody's going to care about you. Like, if you can't get them, you need to get them to care about you. Step 1. But before you can get to step 1, they need to find you. So it's really step 1.2.
It's like when you were a kid and you wanted to get a car,
right?
But you couldn't get a car without a job. But you can't get a job without a car.
No, which means your mom drives you to work when she can every now and then, or you find a job after hours when they're home from work to get a job. Today, you could just sell stuff on eBay.
Yeah, both of my kids, I've tried to get them into YouTubing. I'm like my daughter's into makeup. I'm like, just do a makeup channel with your girlfriend. I'll help you get people to the channel.
Right. I did the same thing. I'm like, why don't you do a makeup tutorial channel? Oh, she did one video and never posted it. I think she found out it's hard. Like, the problem is YouTube people make things look easy.
Yes.
And it's really not easy, even with less editing, the frequency, the scheduling, everything around. It's not easy. And the minute you turn, and then you have the camera. Some people, they talk, you turn the camera on, they're like, so, hi. And they don't know what to do. Even though they know what to do, it just, for some reason, they shut down. You got to practice and put out a lot of crap before you get something that's good.
Yeah, like that's one of the things people will say to us. They're like, you look so natural when you guys talk in front of the camera. I'm like, well, go shoot 1,500 videos.
Yeah.
Easy.
And I mean, I've taken public speaking courses and stuff like that because I was in sales. So they force you that to happen to you. And even in those classes, they would go and they videotape everything. And then you'd have to sit in a room and watch your presentation on the videotape. And then they'd critique you. And they're like, you don't seem to have a problem with this. I'm like, that's because I do this for fun every week. And this is nothing, right? So
process sounds absolutely horrible.
Yeah. But it gives you, YouTube gives you a lot of practice with humans and being a human and talking with people and interacting. So, I encourage people to do it, which is kind of why I'm one of the contributors. And I try to help people narrow down what they're doing because it's it's a life skill. Even if you never have 1 million subscribers, and I never plan to have 1 million subscribers, like I'm a cocktail channel. Like it's very niche, and a lot of people, once they make their cocktail, they go away. Like that's all I needed was the whiskey sour. Thank you. So you're not going to get everybody. So I don't have envisionments of millions of subscribers. I'd like 120,000. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, tabletop roleplay games is the same way. It's just a smaller niche, and you're never gonna. It's never gonna look like a makeup channel or a video game channel. It's just it just isn't what it is. But that's fine because we have a closer knit family, and the community is really good.
Yeah. I mean, we know out of our people who are in the chat rooms when we do our live stream. I've met some of these people at cocktail conferences. I know them by name. I know how many kids some of them have. I do ebooks, recipe ebooks online, and one of my fans she's a teacher, so she does all my editing for me for free, and she just goes through the ebook and fixes it up, and I go and make the edits and I post it online for people to download. So like those people, they fund you via Patreon and super chat and all those things, and they're always there. Like, and when something goes wrong, they figure out a way to make things right. So that to me is better than having 1 million people who really don't have anything to do but to post cool as their comment, like, or first. Like, I'd rather have substance.
If you're lucky, because then there's those other nasty comments you were talking about, which like I don't know about your niche particular, but I know in ours that we get that, but there's so much less of it.
Really? Oh, I get a lot. I mean, it's only on a lot of the bigger videos, and I collect them in a notebook every now and then. I like if they're really good ones, like usually like a lot of N bombs, and I've been called everything from name a homosexual reference. I mean, I've got a co-host that's a guy, right? So it's like an open game for like, oh, you guys totally sleep together, blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, you have nothing better to do right now. Like, there's nothing going on in your life where you need to be busy doing something that you have to write that right now.
And so what if we did?
that often is a good, or I think you're annoying. You talk too much. You don't get to the point, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, so I just comment, watching the video is optional. Like it's not a requirement. And then other people laugh at them for it because, like, oh, you try to troll him and you totally got burned. I'm like, oh, I'm satisfied. That's pretty good when your fans defend you.
No, it definitely feels good. But like I said, we don't get as much of it. What we get more than anything is corrections because we screw things up all the time. And I'm like, whatever.
Well, that's a good point. When I first started, one of the issues I had was I like to make stuff up that sounded legit. And as you start to grow and your credibility goes up, people start to take you seriously. Like, so at one point I was like, I can't just say stuff anymore. Like I have to either put the research in, or at least what I do really is I say whatever I'm going to say. And I go, that's completely fabricated. I have no basis for why I came up with that as an answer. So go do your research. I don't know, but it sounds great, or it sounds sciencey. Let's go with it.
It sounds sciencey. Yeah. I'll have to remember that one for future reference.
Just got to let them know that you don't know what you're talking about, and it's cool.
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, we're all humans and no one knows everything. So before we wrap this up, could you give me one good sci-fi drink and one good fantasy drink?
I probably could.
Maybe. Well, just make it up and make it sound sciencey.
Well, I could do the sciencey. Well, so I'll give, I don't know, does this fit in? You ever play River City Ransom on the Nintendo Entertainment System?
I have not. I do not play many videos, but I'm sure there's people out there that do. So
well, there's a drink in River City Ransom. It's kind of like a Double Dragon, if you ever heard Double Dragon, but cuter. And you get all these different power-ups as you go shopping through these shops as you get money. And one of them was called Karma Jolt, and it always gave you a lot of stamina. So I thought I could make a Karma Jolt cocktail. So I made a Karma Jolt cocktail, which was rum, orange juice, Kahlua, NOS energy drink, because it's going to have like some sort of energy, and then like 5 dashes of habanero bitters. So like it's got a lot of energy. It's got a little rum kick to it, and actually it was Kahlua French vanilla, and then heat. So you get the energy and it burns at the same time. I don't know if that probably, I guess, not really scientific. Then Garnish Cocktail, which from Warcraft was overproof rum, limoncello, grenadine, and sour mix. So it's kind of like a really strong daiquiri that'll knock you on your head. One that I think a fan submitted this, or I found it on Reddit for Star Trek, was during when Leonard Nimoy passed away. We did 5 because we were doing 5 cocktails at that time. We did 5 Leonard Nimoy themed cocktails, and one of them was called Amok Thyme, which I think is either episode 1. It's within the first few episodes, but thyme was spelled THYME, the herb, and it was bourbon, thyme honey, simple syrup, lemon bitters, and a fresh thyme sprig. So it's kind of basically a bourbon kind of drink with some honey, but it had the thyme in there. I'm like, it's such a great name. Like it fits. Any nerd that's a Star Trek person will be like, that's awesome. They might not necessarily like bourbon, but you could appreciate the name. It works.
How did it taste?
It tastes good as long as you like thyme. Like honey and bourbon work well. So you get a little sweet, a little sour from the lemon bitters are kind of, it's almost like the smell of lemon pledge, like that lemon vibrancy. But then the thyme works really well if you like herbs and you like thyme. Otherwise, probably not a drink for you.
I can't say, I don't know that I've ever had thyme in any of my drinks.
See, it's all about exploring the possibilities of things that you don't yet understand. And you know what? Before I started a YouTube channel, the only thing I ever had was a margarita and a Mai Tai, and everything else scared the crap out of me. And so that was my original inspiration, was let's build a channel and figure it out. Like, not knowing what's going on, never had time before, right? Just throw it in a drink and see how it works. And then it doesn't become so scary anymore. I don't know. Gotta start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. I'll be honest with you, I'm actually not that much of a drinker. I look like I probably drink a lot of beer, but I don't actually drink that much. Every now and again, and when I do drink, I rather drink liquors than beer anyway. So your channel would be right up my alley. I'll have to refer my wife there because usually I'm like, hey, I want something to drink. Go find the thing.
Measure it for me. And the irony is, I'm not much of a drinker either. Like I don't really like, if we go to a restaurant, I order usually an iced tea or a Coke Zero, or Diet Coke. I don't, because I saw how does your liquor survive this? I think Kyle had wrote a while ago. I'm not a big drinker. Like, I drink for science. Like, I drink for the show.
I drink for science.
If I design a drink, that's probably the only time I get a buzz, because I got to keep retrying stuff. But a lot of the times, in a social scene, things have changed more recently now that people expect me to be making cocktails. So it happens naturally. But like, overall, I don't, on a nightly basis, I know some people have like a glass of wine at night, maybe a beer. I drink water, Coke Zero, and Arnold Palmer. Like, I'm not a big drinker. I just don't like to be drunk. I get tired and run down, and I don't have time because I'm working on a YouTube channel.
So you should put that on a shirt. I drink for science.
That's it. I drink for science. I did have it's science bitch t-shirt around the time of Breaking Bad. It had like a layered shooter on it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's right around that time. I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us. I really appreciate everybody. And until next time, stay nerdy. Oh, and before you guys go to the description. That's where you can find all of Derek's links. Go check them out.
I'll put some recipes for you down there too.
Cool. Awesome.